Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and I just wanted to apologize for being a little bit late to this stream and to the podcast. For those of you guys in the audio section, you guys aren't going to know the difference, but for those of you guys on the YouTube side and on the live show, you guys will know the difference. And I had internet problems, so I just wanted to make sure all of those were situated and all of it was fixed before I ended up doing this. And so just so happens that now it's working. So I just want to go ahead and, go off and give out the rest of the segments that I'm going to be doing in this podcast. So the first one is going to be talking about the best small forwards in the NBA. I already did a segment talking about the best point guards and the best shooting guards, so I'm just continuing with that list and doing the small forwards. Then in the second segment, I'm going to be talking about Joel Embiid receiving another medal after winning his gold medal with the United States. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. Then in the third segment, I'm going to talk about the San Antonio Spurs and the possibility of them signing another player that was also participating on the French team. So, to give more chemistry for Victor Wembanyama and to help him develop into the player that he can be. And I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that in the third segment. I have an article ready for that. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to talk about women's basketball and their ridiculous record of never losing a single game in the entire creation of their program. So I'll just talk a little bit about that in the fourth segment. We also have a special fifth segment that I reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that final segment up until the fourth. If you want to know exactly what that final segment is. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that your voices are extremely important to us, and we love hearing from you during the show, whether you've got a burning question, a hot take for the game, or just something that you wanted to share. We're all ears. The show is just about keeping the conversation lively and making sure that your voice is a part of the mix. So don't be shy and drop your thoughts in the chat. If you really want to make sure your comment or question gets noticed, you could use Super Chat. Just hit the $ below and below the chat box, send in your message, and it's guaranteed to get featured on the show. Plus, it's a great way to support our channel, and your super chats help us keep the lights on and bring you even more of the content that you love. We're so grateful for each and every one of you who joins us here, and your support makes all the difference. So let's keep the conversation going. Send in those super chats. If super chat isn't really your thing, you could always just use the link that's displayed below the ticker, gsmcsports.net. Tip and donate. It really helps the show. It makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And without further ado, let me go ahead and pull up the slides real quick. Just give me a second. And then we can go right ahead and get into the segment, which is talking about the best small forwards in the league. Again, I should remind all of you guys that this is my list, therefore my opinions. Therefore, I could put anyone that I want at number 1, I could put anyone that I want at number 10, and I can leave anyone that I don't want off of this list. So if any of you guys have a problem with the list that I've made, maybe let me know in the comments and I'll see what you guys think and we can talk about it. I think I back my statements up pretty well when I make these kinds of lists, and the small forward position I think is a relatively easy position to look at to look at players and to figure out which player is the best, because it's usually the same two at 1 and 2, and those same two that you see at 1 and 2 come in either LeBron or Kevin Durant. I have LeBron as the best small forward in the entire NBA. I know a lot of people, they're going to go immediately to the comments and be like, oh, but LeBron didn't make it to the second round. The rest of these guys did. Or, oh, LeBron hasn't won since 2017 or something like that. And to that, I just say hater alert, because after watching these Olympics and after watching what he's been able to do in the NBA, since he won the championship back in 2020, I made a mistake. I said 2017. I meant 2020. He's been, consistent throughout his entire career. And on top of that, he's been very, very consistent towards the latter half of his career, where with the Lakers, he's averaged since winning the championship, he averaged 25 points per game. Then he averaged 30. Then he averaged 28. And now he's averaging 25.7. On top of that, while shooting better from Stephen Curry from the three-point line. Yes, he shot better than Steph Curry from the free throw line this year. And, if you don't have him as the best small forward in the NBA, then in my opinion, you're just a hater. Because it genuinely doesn't make any sense. And this gold medal and these strings of victories that he's been able to give the United States, it only shows just how badly the Lakers have managed LeBron James and the roster. They've done a horrible, horrible job. And the fact that they even missed the playoffs while having LeBron is a sin in of itself. So it isn't the Lakers' fault that LeBron doesn't make it to the postseason. The Lakers are the reason why LeBron doesn't make it to the postseason. He's being held back by this franchise, which is crazy to say because this franchise is the same franchise that paired up Shaq with Kobe, that was also able to pair up Magic with Kareem, and have this history of building through draft picks and hitting on big name players, and they just haven't done that. Part of the reason could be because LeBron, and for as good as LeBron is, he also as opposites, attract, most of the time positives end up being repelled. Same thing with magnets. So whenever you bring in LeBron, it's like everybody else on the team either ends up playing worse because of the nerves when playing with LeBron, or they end up not wanting to play for LeBron and would rather go somewhere else. You see and you notice every single offseason, every single team avoids trying to make deals with Los Angeles. Every single team does this. And this ultimately affects their chances of acquiring talent via trades and acquiring them via free agency, which is something that they're so popular in doing. And you can blame it on LeBron, you don't blame it on LeBron, doesn't matter. He's the best small forward, end of story. The only other player that I would even accept being over LeBron would be someone like Kevin Durant. And even then, that's a very, very slim chance. Kevin Durant would have to do something incredible. Like in 2021, when he was or in 2020, 2021 to be a little bit more accurate, where he stepped on the three-point line and forced the overtime of Game 7 when it should have been a game winner. That was when everyone thought Kevin Durant was the best small forward in the league, especially since he returned from his injury, from the playoffs all those years ago when he tore his Achilles. And you can look at the stats, you can look at all of the accolades that he has. Him being at number 2 makes sense. And if it wasn't for LeBron being LeBron, then he would probably make number 1 on this list. Now, he didn't make it far in the postseason this year, but he does have championship belts under his. He does have championships under his belt, as well as playing really well in the postseason, not just for Phoenix, but also for Brooklyn, as well as Golden State, as well as OKC. He has the resume. He has everything that you could ask for in a small forward, especially the scoring prowess. That's he's considered as one of the best scorers, one of the best pure scorers in NBA history, and I wouldn't be opposed if that's your opinion on somebody as talented and as prolific of a scorer as Kevin Durant is. The lowest points he's averaged for his career was 25.8, or the lowest points per game average that he's had in his tenure, because he's been on several different teams, was with Golden State, when he averaged 25.8 points per game with Golden State. With Brooklyn, he averaged 29, and with Phoenix, he averaged 27. I have no idea how, when someone returns from an Achilles injury, they somehow become better, but that's just Kevin Durant. He's in the chat. What's good? Nothing much. I'm just, ranking my small forwards. I think Kevin Durant at 2 is a pretty solid pick, because the rest of the players under them, they might have had, the good season last year. But in terms of, the rest of the accolades and the things that I know they can do, I would put Kevin Durant over them. Now, this next player on this list, a lot of people, they might complain that he's not number one, or they might complain that he is, so low at number 3 because, Celtics fans, they're incredibly spoiled. I'm talking about Jason Tatum, obviously. I think that given this, even without... Actually, no, scratch that. With this championship, it sort of boosts him in, the small forward category. I would put players, before he won the championship, I would put players like Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler over him. But since he did win the championship, and recently won the championship, as well as win the gold medal with the United States, I had to put him in the top 3, at least. I was against the fact that he wasn't playing in a couple of the games. While I'm not a big fan of, him and just the, for lack of a better term, aura that he gives off, I wish I could have used a better term, but I really couldn't, because it's the energy that I get from him. I don't know. Something about him just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's because he likes Kobe a little bit too much, and... too much of Kobe is not necessarily a good thing. And maybe, he thinks he's supposed to be maybe I feel like he thinks he's supposed to be the best player because Kobe was the best player. And, he's just not supposed, he just wants to be exactly like him and things like that. But it's I don't know why. I'm not a big fan of Tatum. But I do think he is, the third best small forward on this list. Him in the chat, he's saying otherwise. He doesn't know about that. But then again, when I reveal the rest of the players, you're going to see sort of why he's so high on this list, because there aren't really that many small forwards that are better than Tatum. I mean, he wasn't the best player in the finals, obviously. He wasn't even the best player in the Eastern Conference Finals either. But it's not like his stats and, the numbers that he was averaging are bad and warrant this kind of criticism. If he was playing really bad, how he did in 2022 in the finals, then I totally understand. But for last season, he averaged 26 points per game in the regular season, shot 47% from the field and 37% from 3, and he was doing everything in the postseason as well. He averaged 25 points along with almost 10 rebounds, I should say. And the only thing that was really bad about him was his three-point shooting. But everyone on the Celtics was a rusty three-point shooter. So I don't really hold that against him. And, I mean, he literally just won the championship. Compared to everybody else on this list, you can make the argument that, he's a little bit better than them. But I'll leave that to you guys and your opinions. Now, the next player on this list is Kawhi Leonard. Now, I know Kawhi Leonard in the postseason is a myth. A lot of people consider him unstoppable. And they would be right to consider him unstoppable. He's definitely one of the better postseason performers that we've seen in today's NBA. The one thing and the one reason why I don't put him over Jason Tatum is because he gets hurt. That is the only reason why I put Kawhi Leonard lower than Jason Tatum. It's because almost every single time in the postseason, since he's gone on the Clippers, when you desperately need him, he always doesn't show up. Because either he's injured or because he doesn't play well. In 2020, it was because he didn't play well. But in the rest of the years, he was injured. Not to mention the fact that the Clippers, without him, they were able to make it farther in the postseason than with him. And, that's always sort of rubbed me the wrong way, and I can't really put somebody that isn't available for these games higher than someone who was available for these games and ended up winning these games in the end. Those two finals MVPs, they really saved Kawhi, but for the most part of his career, Kawhi Leonard has always been on good teams. He gets most of the credit whenever things go right, and gets barely any criticism when things go wrong. Maybe that's because he's quiet, so the media just decides to leave him alone, unlike, certain small forwards in this league, LeBron. But just because, he's an introvert doesn't mean that, he's the most reliable player. And just because he's good in the postseason also doesn't mean he's the most reliable player. Because how can you rely on someone who keeps getting injured so early in the postseason? It's worse than Joel. But, again, that's the only reason why I don't have him higher than Jason Tatum. Because, that whole fiasco with LA, trying to make the Clippers a relevant franchise, it was such a disaster. It wasn't even funny. And he was injured again in these most recent postseasons when he lost to Luka, and he was nowhere to be found for the team. And it's like, how am I supposed to put him over somebody that is there for every single postseason? Yes, he might have lost every single one of them up until now, but he's there, and he has way more, he has way more time in the postseason, it feels like, than Kawhi Leonard. Hell, Jason Tatum, he was drafted in around, 2018. In the span of not counting the 2 years, since the Clippers acquired Kawhi, I think Jason Tatum has been a part of more postseason series than Kawhi Leonard. And that says a lot, given how a lot of people expected Kawhi and the Clippers to go far and above and beyond and finally get over the championship hump and win the championship. So that's sort of the reason why I don't have him higher on this list and why I have Jason Tatum higher than him. Next player is Jimmy Butler. Again, another playoff myth. And again, the big reason why I don't have him higher than Tatum was because he was unavailable in the postseason. And I just think that his whole playoff Jimmy persona is just a little bit over exaggerated. I'm not that big of a fan of Jimmy Butler, and while he's expected to not play for the Miami Heat soon, but really, again, the biggest reason why I have him at number 5 is because almost in every other year with the Miami Heat, he's been able to make it to the finals. He hasn't been able to win, but he's been able to make it. And, he's averaging 20 points per game on 49% shooting as well as 41% shooting from 3. And he played 60 games last season, so he's not really worried about meeting the criteria for winning NBA accolades and things like that. But he's also a pretty solid option once the postseason comes. Now, the big problem with this most recent postseason was that he wasn't there. And that was the big reason why the Boston Celtics were able to beat the Miami Heat. Again, I can't put somebody who wasn't there for the postseason over somebody who went through the entire postseason and won it in the end. Jimmy Butler, he makes it to the finals every other year, but he doesn't end up winning the finals every other year. And his finals performance against the Nuggets was also very, very bad, along with that's really the only finals performance where he was really, really bad in it. And I can't really put him higher than Tatum just off of how it's going, And next is actually not DeMar DeRozan. Him made a prediction. He thought that DeMar was going to be next on this list. It was actually Brandon Ingram. Yeah, Brandon Ingram is the next player on this list. And Brandon Ingram, his career has been a little bit meh, I guess you could say. He hasn't really done everything in the league. He's gone to the playoffs a little bit, but he doesn't have that many accolades. This is sort of where we go down the rabbit hole of mid-tier small forwards. And, this is sort of where they're at this point in their career where it's okay, I think I figured out my role. Now I have to figure out how to win while playing my role. And it's not that easy. Not everybody does it right off the bat. And Brandon Ingram is definitely one of them. And, in my opinion, I think Brandon Ingram is, he was underrated before. Now he might be getting a little bit overrated. And if he doesn't win soon, that trade with the Pelicans is really going to haunt him, because that was the reason why he was even on New Orleans in the first place. And again, I'm just I'm a little bit cautious when I do these small forwards, but not putting DeMar DeRozan over Brandon Ingram was a little bit risky, because I genuinely figured that DeMar and his play with in basketball, it's not really the same as Brandon Ingram and his play in basketball. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this segment up into two different parts because we are already over the limit of time. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off this segment in the next segment, as well as I'm going to go ahead and go into the second segment, which is going to be talking about Joel Embiid receiving the Order of Valor. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue this list, as well as, go into the next segment right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned for that.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, I'm going to go ahead and continue with my list on the best small forwards. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about Joel Embiid receiving an award from Cameroon and just my opinions on that. Yeah, he just got another medal from Cameroon. And I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue with my list. Before I get into both of those things, though, I'd like to remind everybody that, during the show, whether you got a burning question, a hot take on the game, or you just been dying to share something, we're all ears. So it's all about keeping the conversation lively. If you really want a comment or question to get noticed, go ahead and use Super Chat. Just hit the $ below the chat box, send in your message, and it's guaranteed to get featured on the show. It's a great way to support our channel as well. Your Super Chats help us keep the lights on, and we're so grateful for each and every one of you who joins and, gotta fix the camera there, excuse me, and shows your support. It really makes all the difference. Let's keep the conversation going. If Super Chat isn't your thing, you could always use gsmcpodcast.net in the display below the ticker. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And again, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this next segment. I'm going to talk about Joel Embiid and his medal with Cameroon first. So Joel recently just, won the award for, literally an award specific to Cameroon, and, it's called the Medal of Valor, and they gave it to him because he won the gold medal, which is, that's to my understanding as to why they gave him that medal. And it recognizes individuals who have risked their lives or personal safety to save or attempt to save another person's life. That's what the Medal of Valor is, at least in Washington. I don't know what it is for Cameroon, but I'm just going to go ahead and see what it entails in Cameroon. Yeah, it honors the given Cameroon natives who have made exceptional contributions in the field of arts, science, agriculture, commerce, or industry. So yeah, that's the Order of Valor that Joel Embiid received quickly after winning the Olympics. And I think that this, the reason why he got this award was literally because he ended up winning the gold and representing Cameroon. While he didn't represent Cameroon, everybody in the stands and everybody on Team USA and everybody knew that Joel Embiid should have played for Cameroon. That was one of the biggest dislikes of the entire Team USA team. It was the fact that Joel was on it and the fact that he wasn't playing for Cameroon. And, a lot of people, they like to say, oh, he was just easing his way into a gold medal, because like if you win when you're playing with the United States, you easily have the best chances of winning a gold medal in basketball. And I'm surprised that they gave this to him, but then I mean, I guess it comes with the unwanted recognition, because let's face it, he's very iconic, and he was either a good thing for Team USA or a bad thing for Team USA. Regardless, he gave you clicks. And every single time somebody mentioned Joel, there's always going to be that other person that mentions he's from Cameroon, he shouldn't even be on the United States, and that gave them all the attention. On top of that, winning a gold medal for a lot of countries is one of the highest, honors that you can get. Like, winning a gold medal is really, we like to, in the United States, we treat it as child's play, because it's like every single time we have several athletes that win the gold medal, so we don't really think it's a big deal. But you also have to remember that there are so many other athletes that didn't medal and didn't end up winning a medal. And so winning one and letting that one be gold weighs a lot. Like, it weighs a whole lot more than what we think it is. And Embiid, like in the post, like I guess you could say the interview that he had over there, it was a good experience. It's been a grind being away from home and family for a few weeks, but the group of guys we have made it easy. Paris is a great city, and the next one is in Los Angeles. I might not be with Team USA. I might be with Cameroon. This is what he said when questioned about the 2028 Olympic Games that are being held in Los Angeles. And I honestly don't know. Like, I mean, will a lot of people, like him more that he's on Cameroon, or a lot of people going to dislike him now because he abandoned the United States? But we'll see how that goes. I mean, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think he deserves the award, or do you think he doesn't deserve the award? So, with that out of the way, I'm going to continue with this list. So we left off at Brandon Ingram, who was left off at 6. So now we're at number 7, who is DeMar DeRozan. And I mean, DeMar was going to make this list eventually. It was only just a matter of time. And DeMar, he's been a little bit, I don't want to say, how should I say, confusing? Yeah, I think that's the better word. He's been very confusing. His career has been very confusing. Throughout his time with Toronto, when he was the best player, and the best player on the team, one of the biggest obstacles in his entire career was the postseason. Specifically, LeBron James. Like, he just could never, ever escape LeBron. In every single postseason that he's been in for the Eastern Conference, 3 times in a row was losing to LeBron. 3 times in a row. And ever since, that third loss, he has not been the same kind of player that I remember him when he was on Toronto. Like, he hasn't been that same leader. I really feel like in that Toronto, Kyle Lowry was the leader for that team, and DeMar was just, I guess you could say the brute for that team. Like, the scorer, the guy who mainly scores and things like that, and is rather tough with the basketball. But he wasn't a leader. And that loss that he took with Toronto, especially after, seeing Kawhi Leonard win the championship for that same team that he was a part of, it gave him, obviously, he started questioning himself. I saw this on a podcast. He really, started contemplating, is it me? Am I the reason why I can't win a championship? And ever since that tenure with Toronto, ever since then, he has not been nearly the same kind of world-stopping player that he was on Toronto. I mean, 2022, he had a pretty good year, averaging 27 points per game, but there was no playoff success with that. And he's also been having relatively good years on the Chicago Bulls, but there's just no playoff success when it comes with that. For his entire tenure with the Bulls, he shot 50% from he shot 49%, from the field, and 33% from 3. He has upped his 3-point percentage tremendously to, develop and adapt to this league now. And it's really, I'm just stunned at the fact that he has yet to win a ring, and he's also yet to make the postseason with the Chicago Bulls since 2022. I would have expected him to make it a little bit, but he barely makes it. And going from always making the playoffs to barely making the playoffs is it's going to take you some knocks. But Again, I have him higher than the rest of the small forwards on this list, and the rest of the small forwards being Franz Wagner. Now, I was previously against having Franz Wagner on this top 10 small forward list. In fact, if you were to ask me to make this list before the Olympics, I don't think Franz Wagner would even be on it. And, excuse me. Apart from signing a huge deal with the Orlando Magic, he played very well for the German team, and he was just a very, very important piece for those guys, and he was a great shooter, which was one of the biggest reasons why I didn't have him, didn't have high hopes for him when he signed that big contract with Orlando, but he's proven all of my doubts incorrect, I guess you could say. So I had to put him here, had to put him somewhere, and he's going to be. I think he'll be cool at being number 8. I think it makes sense that he's number 8. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Again, we're sort of on like the lower end of this tier where I'm listing off some of the mid players, and another one of them is OG Anunoby. Now, OG, compared to the rest of the starters and the rest of the players on this list, he definitely has the weakest point production compared to everyone else. But really, his value is what's important. The Knicks win more games when they have him on the court than when they don't have him on the court. And his defense is also one of the best, arguably the second or maybe even third best on this list. And, Scotty's coming up. Don't worry about that. But OG Anunoby, I would put him over Scotty just because he's been able to be more value for the Knicks than Scotty has been more value to the Toronto Raptors. On top of the fact that if it wasn't for OG getting injured, the Knicks would probably be in the finals. Like, that's just me. And then finally, last player on this list is Scotty Barnes. Again, he was on my fantasy team, one of my favorite players, one of my most underrated players actually going into this season. Scotty Barnes, I would have had him higher, but I just, I don't think he's really done much aside from just 1 year compared to everyone else on this list. Maybe I put him over OG, but that was a big maybe given off of the fact that OG was healthy for a majority of the season to help the Knicks while Scotty Barnes was injured. But before Scotty Barnes got injured, he was leading the Raptors in every single stat. Points, rebounds, steals, assists, and like any sort of stat and blocks as well. I completely forgot about that. Every stat that you could think of, Scotty Barnes was leading in it for the Raptors. And he was the best player that I had on fantasy. He was so unbelievably consistent for my fantasy team. Like, I couldn't believe how consistent that he was. Like, he was getting triple-doubles, double-doubles, like, every single night. And he's definitely a sleeper pick. If you guys are looking for a fantasy draft, he's definitely a huge sleeper pick. A lot of people don't really pick up on him because he's on the Raptors and because they don't think that he gets that many stats. But he was a huge steal for my team. And we didn't pay attention to the league much afterwards, but I did. And I remember I was in the lead every single week. Like, I'm actually gonna go ahead and pull up my my former fantasy team right now to see if I still have a picture of it, or to see if I still have a do I count Zach as a small forward? No, he was on my top 10 shooting guards list, so no, I do not count him at small forward, especially with DeMar playing as well. I count him as a shooting guard, but that's just me. And I had LeBron on the team, I had Scottie Pippen on the team, I had Anthony Davis on the team, and they're all very, very valuable. Like, all of those guys that I just mentioned, they were some of the best picks that I've had. And I really wanted to get Jokic. Like, everyone wants to get Jokic, but I couldn't. And so I made do with what I could. And that's really all that I have for the small forwards list. Again, let me know in the comments if you guys would change anything, or if you guys agree with this list, or if you wouldn't change anything at all. Or if, I missed a player, because maybe I did miss a player. I don't think I did. I spent a good time on this list, but I don't think I missed a player. And let me know in the comments what you guys think of this list. So we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about the Spurs and the possibility of them signing a new player to the team that could potentially help Victor Wembanyama develop. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about that. I have the article pulled up right here, so be sure to stay tuned after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm just going to be talking about this article that's saying that the Spurs should probably sign a former EuroLeague MVP and, just given the aftermath of these Olympics. So I'm just going to go ahead and read over this article and just give my opinion. So in the contending years of Greg Popovich's tenure with the Spurs, the team was a pioneer in seeking overseas talent. Now that is definitely like one of the things that the Spurs excelled at in the early stages of, I guess you could say, their their popularity. That's the word, yeah. And some of their best players are international players. Like, you have Tony Parker, he's French. You have Manu Ginobili, he played for Argentina. Tim Duncan, he was United States, but Tim Duncan, ironically, he's the guy that doesn't have a gold medal. Yeah, a lot of people forget that he was on the 2004 Olympic team, and in 2004, the United States was god-awful. Like, I'm not even joking. This was like, most of the United States men's losses came in 2004, and it wasn't a good time to be a basketball fan for the United States, and it was really tough just even showing your face as an NBA player after that catastrophe in 2004. And one of the big problems, like, I see a lot of people, they don't really realize just how bad that 2004 team is. Half of the team was, like, split up. It was half veterans and half of it young guys. And the young guys were Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, people like that. And the coach wouldn't play the young guys. And not to mention, the rest of the staff also didn't know how to deal with the young guys. And so, it was usually just, like, the group of old guys chilling out with, and the group of young guys would be chilling out, but there wouldn't be any sort of chemistry. Like, people would, like, this was sort of when the United States thought, like, okay, just send in some of the best NBA players and they'll figure it out. Like, that was the state of where the world was at the time. Now, in 2004, that was when people realized that the rest of the world was catching up to them in terms of skill on a basketball court, and that you can't just put talent together and expect to beat these guys, because they've been playing as a team way longer than most of the United States players have even been playing as a team. And so, when you have a team go up against another team and that other team has better chemistry, I might have confused a lot of you. If you go up against a team that doesn't have good chemistry, compared to a team that has good chemistry, they're going to pick you apart. And that's exactly what happened in 2004. So the Spurs, seeing how quickly the other world was advancing, they went ahead and they jumped on that. They went and they started signing a bunch of overseas players, and the rest of the league, eventually they followed suit, and eventually everybody had their foreign NBA player that's just a demon and a myth or a legend or something like that. And Who was the coach? I don't remember who the coach was. It wasn't Coach K. That I know. It wasn't Coach K in 2004. I mean, I was 1 year old when this Olympic team was made, so I have no idea who the coach was. I'll go ahead and check right now. And let me just see. Let's see. Coach for Olympic basketball. I know it wasn't Coach K because they brought Coach K in 2008 just so that way they could have a better chance in winning the Olympics. It was Larry Brown who was the Team USA coach of 2004. He did not like LeBron or Melo or Dwayne Wade on the team. Like, he just barely used them. And, that's who the coach was if you were curious. And back to what I was saying and what I've been wanting to say before I went on this tangent with Olympic basketball. The Spurs, they've been able to sign a bunch of free agents overseas. The Spurs, there's this article saying that the Spurs should sign the former EuroLeague MVP, and it's just to reclaim their throne as leaders of finding international teams. At least according to this article. So Popovich's tenure can be described as enduring long-term success, an epitome of hegemony, and it was built on a foundation of acquiring role players who plied their trades in Europe. Their 2014 championship is perhaps the best example of their dominance, characterized by foreign influence. Their star big man, Tim Duncan, was born in U.S. territory of the Virgin Islands. Tony Parker, he was raised in France. And the greatest six men of all time, arguably Manu Ginobili, spent 3 years in Italy after being drafted by the Spurs in 1999. And they also had Thiago Splitter, Boris Diaw, Marco Bellinelli, and Aussies Patty Mills, and Aaron Baines coming off of their bench for that championship team with the Spurs. They had a lot of international players on that team. So the league has since caught up with the Spurs, and it is more challenging to bring top international prospects like, for example, Giannis, Jokic, Luka Doncic in back-to-back years. The first overall picks were international picks as well. Victor Wembanyama, Zachary Risacher, they're both French players and captured the imagination of NBA front offices while playing in the Premier of France because, the French, they have a separate league. And hold on just 1 second. They were playing in the French division, the LNB Elite. To put this into perspective, the Olympics currently feature 69 non-American NBA players heading into the 2023-24 season. There were 125 international players on an NBA roster. And the former EuroLeague MVP is currently in the NBA. The team has been forgettable, the team that he was drafted to. Vasilije Micic, again, forgive me if I completely messed up the name. He's on the Charlotte Hornets. Last season, the coaching staff experimented with his height and using a larger ball handler to play the point guard because, Victor Wembanyama was just a rousing success. And this sort of allowed, this was featuring Jeremy Sochan and then Malachi Branham as the lead guards. However, Trey Jones ultimately secured the starting role due to the struggles of others, though it's evident that Popovich remains intrigued by the idea of utilizing a bigger playmaker. This is where Micic comes into play. The 30-year-old, standing at 6'5", joined the Thunder last season after earning EuroLeague MVP. However, he struggled to find his place in the rotation on a contending team. Micic came off the bench for 30 games, facing challenges with scoring and efficiency, which wasn't unexpected given the adjustment period. After being traded to the Hornets, his performance improved in a larger role, particularly in terms of his assist percentage, and despite his NBA struggle, his struggles from three, shooting 37% from three, he worked on his shot with the Hornets and demonstrating his humility and willingness to learn. As a veteran without an ego, he could offer valuable insight to a young team, and his offensive skills could be a very significant asset. Now, They should also, the article continues to go on saying that the Spurs should sign Gershon Yabusele, who has been dubbed the nickname the French Ben Wallace. And yeah, no, like if you look at him, he looks like Ben Wallace, and he plays for France, so it makes sense why he would be considered the French Ben Wallace. He averaged 14 points per game, scoring 20 points in the gold medal game, and he's become the sort of toast of the NBA ball, and he is eager for his return to the NBA. And he last appeared in the NBA 5 seasons ago before heading back to Europe, where he developed into a skilled player. However, several NBA teams have open roster spots to sign him. The Spurs should be one of those front runners to sign him, and I think it makes sense because it's like him in the chat. He said it's crazy that Patty Mills is still a quality player. He recently he signed a contract with I forgot which team it was, but I do know he signed a pretty it was a low contract given the money that he used to be paid. But yeah, like he's a very quality type of player, and he's one of those players that a lot of people really would want on your team. But again, this is sort of like, the French Ben Wallace, he was, I call him the French Ben Wallace. I think that's a very solid nickname. He dunked on LeBron, probably the most famous clip of his entire career, dunking on LeBron. And I don't see why the Spurs wouldn't try and acquire him. He already has the chemistry with Victor, and from what I saw on the court, he only does what the team needs him to do. So I wouldn't really it wouldn't hurt having a Draymond type of player. I always say that Draymond players, they're always people that play like Draymond, they're players that don't get picked first, but it's like when you have them on the team, you're like, yes, thank the Lord that they're on my team. They're one of those kinds of players where it's like you want them on your team, but you don't want to go against them. So that's my comments on that. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. So in this fourth segment, I'm going to go ahead and go over and switch to women's basketball because they recently won a gold medal as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about them in this fourth segment right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to be talking about the women's basketball team and their rousing success overseas. A lot of people, they didn't really like this Olympics team, mainly because Caitlin Clark wasn't on the Olympic team, but, wrong slide. Why isn't it popping up? All right, anyways, regardless, the Olympics, the women's team, they've always been a very, very dominant team. And, they're arguably the best sort of organization, I guess you could say, outside of, for some reason this isn't showing, which I don't understand. All right, there we go. I don't know why that didn't show. I'm sorry for that. But again, he's the women's basketball team for the United States, arguably one of the best women's organizations in sports, period. Of all the if you want a team that defines dominance, that's the women's team. A lot of people, they think men's basketball is the dominant one, right? It's actually the women's basketball that's more dominant than the men's. Yeah, the men's side, overseas and international play is sort of catching up to United States, and there are more players internationally making the NBA and participating in these, teams outside of the United States. But for the women's side, it's not really all that many people overseas. You have to remember that there are some countries that don't even have a women's basketball program. But since the United States was one of the, like, since they were made so early in their time, they were, the team was made in, like, 1936. And actually, no, I lied. The team wasn't made in 1936. They were made in, like, 1990s or something like that. The organization was founded in the 90s, and ever since then, the women's basketball team for the United States, they've never lost a game. Like, they've literally been undefeated since their conception. And, like, that's insane just to think about. Like, and most of their wins are blowout wins. Like, the most recent game that they played against the French, I think that was, like, the closest game in women's basketball that I ever watched. One of the biggest reasons why women's basketball for the United States didn't get that many viewers and didn't get much viewership was because of the lack of Caitlin Clark, as well as the lack of competition compared to every other team. Like, the United States was just so much better and so much taller than a majority of the women's teams, you know, that were competing in these Olympics. And literally the last game that they played went down to the wire against the French team, where there was a French player, she was attempting a 3, but her foot was on the line, so it was a 2, and she ended up making the shot. If it was a 3, the game would have been into overtime. And we might have a different result, we might not, but again, that was a very, very close game, and one of the closest games that I watched, and which is crazy to think about considering how the women's basketball team has been around since the 90s, and that was like their closest game. They have yet to lose. According to this article that was written 5 days ago, the women's basketball team has won 61 consecutive games in Olympic contests, and they recorded a record 8 straight gold medals that this previous Olympic run. Like, they have yet to lose, and like that's really crazy to think about, because it's like, you know, when we talk about when we talk about United States basketball, we only think of the men's side and just how dominant the men are in the sport. We do not even think about how much more dominant the women are than you know, the rest of the men. Like, these women hoop. These women can hoop. Like, they never lose. And it's really crazy to think about how the women's side, you know, the side that gets slandered and scrutinized a lot, ends up being the team that ends up winning every single time. Like, if you want a guaranteed gold medal, just root for the United States women's basketball team, and you're like almost guaranteed to win it every single time. And it's like, when are they going to stop? I mean, it doesn't seem like they're slowing down, and it doesn't really seem like the world is catching up quick enough to these guys, especially now that Caitlin Clark is in the league. I don't know if there's going to be anyone that beats the women's USA team. Like, if anyone beats the United States women's basketball team in the Olympics, that will be like the biggest headline in the entire Olympics. Straight up, United States women's basketball team loses and ends their streak of consecutive wins, because like 60 plus consecutive wins is ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that they've just been so ahead of everybody, because, you know, these Olympics, they happen every 4 years. So every single 4 years, it's most likely going to be a different team. The fact that they've been undefeated for this long is insane. And it just really shows just how talented the women are in the United States, and just how talented these WNBA players are when compared to Olympic players that play for women's basketball. Like, it's staggering. And women's basketball, they just came back from, you know, playing in the Olympics, and, you know, since they just came back from playing in the Olympics, they still have to finish out their regular season. And I'm just going to go ahead and look at some of the teams that are like either in a competing spot in the WNBA or are doing really well despite their players being on an Olympic journey, I guess you could say. I'm gonna call it an Olympic journey because why not? And like the United, like, there was the break. Obviously, you know, they had All-Star break. So the break between, like, you know, the All-Star break and these Olympics, they're more or less the same. And the WNBA is set to restart once again today actually at 9 p.m. The Sparks, they play the Liberty at 9 o'clock. And, a little bit earlier, the Mystics will play the Lynx, and a little bit earlier, the Sky is going to play the Mercury, in case any of you guys are interested. And most of these teams, they're probably going to have to readjust to having, well, not really readjust, but they're going to have to try and get their chemistry back again. It's not the same team that they were playing on. So let me know in the comments who you guys think is going to end up winning the WNBA championship. I have my money on the Liberty. I always root for the Liberty because, let's face it, the Liberty are arguably, the best team in all of the Eastern Conference. In fact, right now they have the best record in all of the Eastern Conference, and it seems like they're going to make the postseason. Like, it really does seem like that's what's going to be the case. But, again, anything can happen in this league. Right now, if you're wondering where the Indiana Fever are, they're actually ranked third in the standings compared to being dead last at one point. So that's improvement. And we're going to see just how great these players are. And that's probably the biggest reason why you didn't hear any sort of news about Caitlin Clark. It was the fact that they were on an all-star break. So just going to go ahead and throw that out there. So now we're at the final segment of the podcast. And in this final segment, I'm going to talk about Steph Curry and his status with the Warriors because there was new news that just ended up breaking out. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that right after this short break. And we are back to the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, I'm going to be talking about Steph Curry and his status with the Warriors, as well as, I'm just going to throw this in there, but the 2K ratings for the WNBA players have just been announced. I don't know if any of you guys, play 2K or if any of you guys, play any sports games, but Caitlin Clark is the highest rated overall rookie. She's a 90 overall, and Angel Reese is right there with a 90 overall as well. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of those ratings. Do you think they're too high? You think they're too low? Because in my experience in 2K, rookies never get rated that high after one season. But that's just me. So next, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about Steph and his status with the Golden State Warriors. So, according to this headline, it says, Steph Curry and Warriors are not likely to hold contract talks in the near future. Now, what does this mean? Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors are not expected to sit down to discuss a contract extension, according to Anthony Slater of The Athletic. Slater noted that Curry is expecting to unplug from basketball-related business for a few weeks. After playing for Team USA in the Paris Olympics and contract talks will occur on the Stars' preferred timeline, the 36-year-old is eligible for a one-year extension worth $62.6 million. Curry should still have more than enough time to negotiate with Golden State's front office regarding his extension, but as the deadline to reach an agreement on August 21st. He has 2 seasons remaining on his 4-year, $215 million deal that he signed all the way back in 2021. The two-time MVP has spent all 15 years of his career with the Golden State Warriors, and he doesn't seem to be considering a change of scenery anytime soon. Curry confirmed that he wants to retire as a member of the organization during a July 8 interview with Mark J. Spears of Anscape. And he's coming off of an impressive string of performances in Paris, helping U.S. earn a 5th consecutive gold medal in men's basketball. He scored 60 points in his final 2 games, hitting several clutch threes to stay alive against France and secure the gold medal for the United States. And although the Warriors are coming off a disappointing play-in tournament defeat, their offseason has been relatively, quiet. Now, if you want to count signing getting Bradley Beal and the trade that they were in as, big, then by all means go right ahead. I don't really think it's big. They lost Klay Thompson in a 6-team sign and trade, netting them Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield. Golden State also signed DeAnthony Melton in free agency in July 8th. The Warriors, they were reportedly interested in Lauri Markkanen. That also ended up failing. They were also interested in Paul George. That also ended up failing. And as Golden State prepares for the 2024-25 season, the team's superstar point guard could decide to wait before signing a 1-year extension. That's what this article says. So a lot of people are just getting rather concerned on whether or not Steph Curry is going to sign the extension or not. Because, if we're being serious, if the Warriors don't get Steph, then the Warriors are done. And they'll always be done. They're never going to get back into that, championship groove, I don't think. And I also don't think that they'll be able to get back into that groove rather quickly. Now, really, Steph, one of the best players that the league has seen, period. And the fact that he's, now that he's waiting on his contract, obviously that's going to draw in a lot of attention. But I think, since he said he was going to retire a Warrior, he's probably going to retire a Warrior. Let me know if you guys think that, because a lot of people are thinking that he's going to team up with LeBron eventually, which I don't think that's really going to happen. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just, I just could never see them on the same team aside from the Olympics, but I really just don't see these two playing on the same team in the later parts of their career. I don't think anybody is going to take a chance on that. And especially in this league where it's very competitive and they're making new young stars that are just so much better than everyone else's yesterday players. Like Victor, he's already just taller than Giannis and he has the same potential as Giannis. It's ridiculous. And it's why would you want to waste a roster spot on one of the 2 oldest players in the NBA at the same time? I don't see that happening. But again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. What do you think Steph Curry's move should be? Do you think he should sign with the Warriors? Do you think he should go somewhere else? Do you think he should play with LeBron? Or do you think he should just retire? Because that's really where the age is for these guys. Steph could retire now and boom, that would be it. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. And, if anything, it'll probably take a really bad injury for him to retire super early. And that's really all that I have to say on this segment of the podcast. Again, let me know what you guys think. And thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love hearing what you guys have to say. So hit the $sign below the chat box, send in your message, and it's guaranteed to get featured on the show. It's a great way to support our channel as well. We're grateful for each and every one of you who joins us here. And if Super Chat isn't really your thing, you can use the link in the description as well as the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all that I have to say to you on this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.